You don't belong in that seat. Hand over the boarding pass. Now." The words sliced through the crowded boarding area at Chicago O'Hare's Gate C-17 like a blade through silk. Victoria Ashford stood behind the Skyline Airways podium with her platinum blonde hair pulled into a sleek low bun, every strand perfectly placed. At 42, she was stunning in a way that demanded attention. Her tailored navy blazer fit like couture, hugging her figure in all the right places. Cream silk blouse underneath pearl earrings catching the fluorescent light, subtle but expensive makeup emphasizing ice blue eyes. She looked elegant, classy, the kind of woman who could sell you a dream or deliver a nightmare with the same polished smile. Right now, she was delivering a nightmare. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't hiding. She said it loud enough for every passenger waiting in the Friday evening crush to hear. She looked right into the black woman standing calmly in the first-class priority lane, wearing simple black jeans and a fitted gray sweater, and decided right then and there that she didn't belong. What Victoria didn't know was that in exactly 12 minutes, the woman standing in front of her would reveal herself as the new owner of the entire airline. And Victoria's 15-year career would end not with a termination letter, but with federal handcuffs. Before we get into how this unfolded, tell me where you're watching from. Comment your city below. And, if you believe respect should be standard, not a luxury upgrade, hit that subscribe button and share this story. Because justice is about to be served at 35,000 feet. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let's rewind to 7:45 p.m. on this cold November evening. Cassandra Monroe walked through Terminal 3 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport alone, no assistant trailing behind. No designer purse with logos screaming wealth, just a black leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder, sneakers that had seen a few miles, and calm, dark eyes that had witnessed this scenario more times than she cared to count. At 38, Cassandra was the kind of woman people noticed but couldn't quite place. She moved with quiet authority, the type that didn't need to announce itself. Her gray cashmere sweater was expensive, $800 of Italian craftsmanship, but you'd only know that if you recognized the subtle weave. Her jeans fit perfectly tailored but not flashy. She wore her power like a second skin, comfortable and unassuming. The past 48 hours had been brutal. Closed-door negotiations in a downtown Chicago high-rise. Endless cups of black coffee that had stopped working around hour 30. Navigating the treacherous, exhausting waters of a multi-billion-dollar corporate acquisition. Her private equity firm, Monroe Capital Group, had just finalized the silent buyout of Skyline Airways at 1 p.m. that afternoon. The paperwork was signed. The wire transfers complete. The announcement scheduled for Monday morning. Tonight, Cassandra was flying to London to meet with European regulatory boards. Traveling incognito, she wanted to experience the airline's frontline service firsthand before the world knew she owned it. She wanted to see what passengers really faced when the CEO wasn't watching. She was about to get a master class. She glanced at her watch, a vintage Rolex her late father had given her when she made her first million. 7:45 p.m. First-class boarding for flight SA-291 to London Heathrow started in exactly 3 minutes. Behind the boarding podium stood Victoria Ashford, 15 years with Skyline Airways. Senior gate supervisor, a title she wore like a crown. Her navy uniform was pristine, pressed with military precision. Brass nameplate, polished to a mirror shine. She had porcelain skin, sharp cheekbones, and a smile that never quite reached those cold blue eyes. She was beautiful in a way that made people want to please her to earn her approval, which made it all the more devastating when she decided you weren't worthy of it. Standing beside her was Derek Hollis, 51, Terminal Operations Manager. Salt and pepper hair, trimmed tight navy suit that strained slightly at the buttons, carrying a clipboard like it was a weapon. He had 28 years in aviation and the swagger of someone who believed those years made him untouchable. Over the years, Victoria had developed what she proudly called an instinct for spotting trouble. In reality, it was bias. Deep, entrenched, weaponized bias hidden behind the protective shield of company policy, and Derek enabled every bit of it. The overhead speakers crackled to life. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Skyline Airways is now inviting our first-class passengers and Diamond Elite members to board Flight SA-291 to London Heathrow through the priority lane. We thank you for your patience and look forward to welcoming you aboard." Cassandra picked up her messenger bag and walked toward the blue-carpeted priority lane. She was first in line. She held out her phone, the digital boarding pass glowing bright on the screen. In her other hand, her dark blue United States passport. Victoria watched her approach. Her eyes moved from Cassandra's hair natural and pulled back in a simple ponytail down to her sneakers, then back up to her face. The calculation was instant, automatic, brutal. Then Victoria stepped sideways, placing her body directly over the optical scanner, blocking it completely. "Excuse me," Victoria said. Her tone dripped with the kind of condescension reserved for someone correcting a misbehaving child. "This lane is for first class and Diamond Elite members only. Economy boards in about an hour. There's plenty of seats available in the back if you ask nicely at the main desk." Cassandra paused. A flicker of confusion crossed her features before settling into something harder. Professional calm masking rising awareness. "I am a first-class passenger," Cassandra replied. Her voice was even modulated entirely free of defensiveness. "Seat 1A. Victoria let out a short laugh. It was dismissive, theatrical, designed to humiliate. She didn't even glance at the phone Cassandra was holding out. "Look, honey," Victoria said, lips curving into a smile that held no warmth. "I know the app can be confusing. Sometimes it sends upgrade notifications that are just offers, not actual tickets. I need you to step out of the line. You're blocking priority passengers from boarding." Behind Cassandra, a man cleared his throat impatiently. Thomas Brennan, 55, white businessman, in a bespoke charcoal suit, silver briefcase in hand, Rolex glinting on his wrist. He shifted his weight, clearly annoyed at the delay. "I assure you, I am not confused," Cassandra said. She kept her voice steady, pushed her phone slightly forward. "If you would simply scan the QR code, your system will verify my seat assignment." Victoria sighed, a heavy, dramatic expulsion of air meant to communicate to everyone within earshot that she was dealing with the most unreasonable person on the planet. "Fine," she said, removing her hand from the scanner with theatrical reluctance. Cassandra placed her phone face down on the glass plate. The scanner beeped. A bright, cheerful green tone. The monitor on Victoria's side of the podium lit up, displaying Cassandra's information in bold green letters, confirming her status. Monroe, Cassandra. MS Seat 1. A first class confirmed. Victoria stared at the screen. Something flickered across her face. Not embarrassment, not apology, annoyance. Her perfectly manicured nails began tapping aggressively on the keyboard, each strike a small act of violence. "Is there a problem?" Cassandra asked. Her tone shifted subtly from polite to professionally firm. "Just a moment," Victoria snapped. She hit a button on her console. The green approval screen vanished, replaced by a blank loading wheel. "I'm getting an anomaly flag on this booking," Victoria announced loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Step to the side, please." She looked past Cassandra, her entire demeanor transforming. Wide, welcoming smile. Warm eyes. "Sir." "Welcome back, Mr. Brennan. Seat 1B today, correct?" "That's right. Thank you, Victoria," Thomas said. He glanced at Cassandra, a brief, uncomfortable look washing over his face, but the promise of first-class champagne and a flatbed seat won out. He scanned his pass and walked down the jet bridge without another word. Cassandra did not step aside. She held her ground at the podium, feet planted. An anomaly flag. Cassandra repeated, her voice dropping an octave, becoming a quiet, lethal instrument. That's fascinating. What specific error code is your terminal displaying? Victoria blinked, clearly thrown by the technical question. That is internal airline information, she lied smoothly. I'm going to need to see your identification and the physical credit card used to purchase this ticket. Company policy for high-tier international bookings. The boarding area was beginning to fill. Passengers in groups 2 and 3 hovered near the seating area, their eyes naturally gravitating toward the tension radiating from the first-class podium. Human beings are instinctively drawn to conflict, and the unspoken confrontation at Gate C-17 was magnetic. Cassandra calmly handed over her passport. Victoria snatched it, opening it with unnecessary force. She scrutinized the photo, looked up at Cassandra, her eyes narrowing as if trying to detect a masterful disguise. She typed the passport number into her terminal with aggressive keystrokes, and the credit card Victoria demanded, palm outstretched. The flight was booked through a corporate travel portal, Cassandra explained with deliberate patience. It's linked to a master corporate account managed by our central accounting department in New York. I don't carry the physical card for that account. However, my passport matches the name on the ticket, and the booking reference is perfectly valid. Company policy, Victoria stated, leaning heavily on the podium. Her voice had grown louder, intentionally performing for the growing audience of onlookers. If a passenger cannot produce the credit card used for a last-minute high-tier international purchase, we are required to verify the passenger's identity to prevent credit card fraud. We have significant issues with stolen cards being used to book premium cabins. The implication hung in the air. Heavy, toxic, unmistakable. Several passengers in nearby seats exchanged uncomfortable glances. A woman traveling with her teenage daughter leaned in and whispered something behind her hand. The daughter pulled out her phone. From across the boarding area, a voice called out, "I'm filming this." Hannah Reyes, 29, stood near the windows with her phone raised. Hispanic woman with dark curly hair wearing jeans and a travel blogger hoodie. Her eyes were sharp-focused. She held her phone steady, red recording light glowing. Beside her, Carlos Martinez, 32, tech entrepreneur with stylish glasses and a leather jacket, had already started his live stream. We're at Gate C-17, Chicago O'Hare, he narrated quietly into his phone. And we're watching discrimination happen in real time. Cassandra felt the familiar cold prickle at the back of her neck. Humiliation. The unearned, sudden shifting of the burden of proof onto her shoulders. Not because of anything she'd done, but because of who she was. She'd fought this her entire life, at Princeton, on Wall Street, in boardrooms filled with men who assumed she was there to take notes, not take over. And now standing in an airport she technically owned, facing a gate agent who saw her and decided she was a problem to be eliminated. I am well aware of FAA and Skyline's ticketing policies, Cassandra said. Her voice dropped another octave, becoming quiet, controlled, devastating. Identity verification requires government-issued photo identification matching the passenger manifest which you are currently holding in your hand. The credit card policy you're referencing applies only to unverified accounts flagged by the fraud department before check-in. I checked in at the premier desk 1 hour ago. My bag is already on the aircraft. Victoria's face flushed an ugly, mottled red. She was not accustomed to passengers quoting operational manuals back at her, especially not passengers she had already decided were beneath her authority. Are you telling me how to do my job? Victoria hissed, abandoning all pretense of customer service. I am pointing out that you are not doing it, Cassandra replied evenly. That's it, Victoria said, slamming the passport down on the counter. You are being hostile and disruptive. I am denying you boarding until we can get a security verification on this ticket. From her position at the secondary terminal, Julia Kent, 26 junior gate agent with auburn hair pulled into a neat braid, watched with her jaw tight. She'd seen Victoria do this before. Last month, a young Indian woman. Before that, a Latino businessman. Each time the passengers walked away humiliated, and Victoria smiled like she'd just cleaned up trash. Julia's hands hovered over her keyboard. She wanted to speak up. She'd wanted to speak up every single time. But Derek was standing right there, and Derek protected Victoria like she was made of gold. Still, something in Julia's chest burned watching it happen again. She pulled up the system logs on her screen and quietly began documenting timestamps. Cassandra did not raise her voice. She did not throw her hands up. She simply took a half step forward, closing the distance between herself and the podium. Victoria Cassandra said, reading the woman's name tag with deliberate care. I strongly suggest you call your shift manager right now, because the hole you are currently digging for yourself is about to become a career-ending grave. And I promise you, there will be no climbing out. Is that a threat? Victoria gasped, eyes widening in mock terror. She turned to Julia. Call Derek, and call airport security. We have a belligerent passenger. Julia hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she picked up the phone. Cassandra crossed her arms over her chest. The fabric of her sweater rustled softly. She could have ended it right then. Could have pulled out her phone, dialed a direct line to the executive suite, had Victoria removed in tears within 5 minutes. But Cassandra was an auditor of human nature, a corporate surgeon who needed to see exactly how deep the rot went. If this is how a woman holding a first-class ticket was treated, how were passengers in economy being treated? How many times had Victoria done this to someone without the power to fight back? Cassandra wanted to see the entire chain of command. She wanted to see if the supervisor would correct the mistake or compound it with institutional protection. Minutes ticked by. The priority boarding lane remained completely stalled. Elite passengers detoured around the standoff, flashing annoyed glances at Cassandra, assuming she was the cause of the delay. The psychological pressure was immense, designed to break the victim, make them walk away in shame. Cassandra stood like a statue. She pulled her phone from her pocket and opened her secure email, began typing a brief message to her legal team, time-stamping the exact sequence of events. 1 gate agent, Victoria Ashford, gate C-17, unlawfully denied boarding after valid system scan. 2 agents cited non-existent fraud policy. 3 agent confiscated U.S. passport and demanded physical corporate card. 4 security requested by agent. She hit send. Hannah's live stream viewer count climbed steadily. 200 watchers, 300, 450. Comments flooded in. This is messed up. Someone tag Skyline Airways. I'm never flying with them again. Why isn't anyone helping her? Carlos uploaded a clip to Reddit with a simple caption. Watch Skyline Airways staff racially profile passenger at gate C-17. Live now. The post went live at 7:52 p.m. Within 3 minutes, 800 upvotes. Comments poured in. Just then, a heavy authoritative voice boomed from the concourse. What seems to be the problem here? Victoria Derek Hollis strode purposefully toward the podium, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He moved with the exaggerated swagger of middle management, holding his clipboard like a sheriff's badge. Flanking him were 2 airport security officers. Officer Rodriguez, Hispanic man in his late 30s, hand resting casually on his duty belt. Officer Kim, Asian man, early 30s, looking inherently bored. Victoria's demeanor instantly transformed. The hostile sneer vanished, replaced by the distressed, frazzled expression of a dedicated employee under siege. Derek. Thank God, Victoria sighed, gesturing toward Cassandra with visible relief. This passenger is trying to board with a flagged ticket, seat 1A. When I asked for the purchasing credit card to verify the transaction, she became extremely hostile and uncooperative. She started threatening my job and disrupting the entire boarding process. Derek frowned, puffing out his chest as he turned his attention to Cassandra. He looked her up and down. His eyes performed the exact same biased calculation Victoria had minutes earlier. He saw a black woman traveling alone, challenging his staff holding up his flight. He did not see the pristine quality of her clothes, the quiet confidence of her posture, the sheer absurdity of the accusation. Ma'am Derrick said, adopting a rigid tone of authority. I am the terminal operations manager. If you are going to threaten my staff and cause a disturbance at my gate, I will have you removed from the airport. Mr. Hollis, Cassandra said, her voice crystalline and unwavering, I suggest you look at the system yourself before you make statements you cannot retract. My boarding pass scanned green. Your agent manually cleared the screen and fabricated an anomaly because she did not believe I belonged in first class. She has confiscated my passport. Victoria has been with this airline for 15 years, Derrick countered instantly. A wall of institutional protection slamming shut. He didn't even glance at the computer monitor. She knows our security protocols better than anyone. If she says you need to show the card, you show the card. Otherwise, I'm canceling your itinerary and refunding the purchaser, whoever that actually is. Are you formally accusing me of fraud, Mr. Hollis? Cassandra asked. The danger in her voice was palpable now, a low, thrumming frequency. I am stating facts, Derrick said, crossing his arms over his clipboard. You have no proof of purchase. You are causing a scene. You are delaying my flight. Officer Cassandra turned her attention to Rodriguez. I would like you to document this interaction. I am a ticketed passenger. My identity is verified via a federal document that the agent is holding hostage, and I am being denied service without cause. Officer Rodriguez shifted his weight uncomfortably. He'd worked airport security for 12 years, seen hundreds of gate disputes. Usually, the irate passenger was yelling, sweating, visibly intoxicated, aggressive. The woman before him was none of those things. She was operating with the cold, terrifying precision of a seasoned attorney. Sir Rodriguez said softly to Derrick, Do you want to just scan her pass again? If it's valid, let's just get her on the plane and keep the flight on schedule. I am not rewarding bad behavior. Derrick snapped, his ego now fully engaged. He reached over the podium, grabbed Cassandra's passport, and tapped it against the desk. Lady, I don't know who you are or how you got this ticket, but you are not flying Skyline tonight. In fact, given your attitude, I am issuing a lifetime ban for disruptive conduct. Victoria, initiate baggage offload protocol. Victoria's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. Her fingers hit the keyboard, initiating the complex process to locate and remove checked luggage from the cargo hold. A process that would delay the flight by at least 30 minutes. A delay they would undoubtedly blame on Cassandra. You are making a catastrophic mistake, Cassandra said. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. It was not a plea. It was a factual statement delivered with surgical precision. The only mistake here was you thinking you could pull one over on us. Derrick sneered, emboldened by the presence of security. Now, are you going to walk away quietly, or are these officers going to escort you out in handcuffs? The crowd of passengers watching had gone deathly silent. The boarding process had completely stalled. Over 200 people were witnessing a woman be confined, humiliated, and banned from an airline for the crime of standing in the priority lane with a valid ticket. From her position at the secondary terminal, Julia Kent made a decision. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. Mr. Hollis, she said, stepping forward. Her reservation is valid. I saw her name in the manifest this morning when I logged in. The scan was green before Victoria cleared it. Derrick's head whipped around. One more word, Kent, and you're gone, too, he hissed. Julia's jaw tightened, but she didn't retreat. I won't lie for you. Not this time. Victoria's mask slipped for just a second, a flash of something ugly crossing her elegant features before she smoothed it away. Hannah's phone was still recording. Her live stream had hit 1,500 viewers. Carlos's Reddit post had climbed to 5,000 upvotes in less than 10 minutes. Another passenger had tweeted at Skyline, Air your staff at ORDC 17 just banned a black woman for having a valid ticket. Discrimination happening right now. Hashtag GateC17. The tweet went live at 7:58 p.m. By 8:01 p.m., it had 1,200 retweets. Cassandra looked at Derek, then at Victoria, memorizing their faces. She reached into her messenger bag. Officer Rodriguez tensed for a brief second, but Cassandra slowly produced a sleek, black smartphone. "I won't be needing the handcuffs," Cassandra said smoothly, unlocking the screen with her thumbprint. She dialed a single number. Speed dial. The phone barely rang before someone picked up. "James," Cassandra said into the receiver. The surrounding crowd strained to listen. "I'm at Gate C-17 at O'Hare. Your terminal manager just issued me a lifetime ban and is offloading my luggage." "Yes, I'll hold." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her bag. Derek let out a harsh bark of laughter. "James. Who's James? Your lawyer. Travel agent. You think your travel agent is going to override a terminal manager's security ban?" "No," Cassandra replied. Her eyes locked onto Derek's with the devastating weight of an incoming tidal wave. "I think your CEO is going to override it." Before Derek could formulate a sarcastic reply, the radio on his hip exploded with static. It wasn't the standard dispatch frequency. It was the emergency override channel reserved exclusively for catastrophic operational failures or direct executive communications. "Terminal Manager Hollis, this is Operations Command. Do you copy?" Derek unclipped the radio, frowning. "Hollis here. What is it, Command? I'm dealing with a security issue at C-17. The voice on the radio was breathless, laced with raw panic. "Derek, freeze everything at C-17. Do not close the aircraft doors. Do not offload any bags. The CEO's motorcade just pulled onto the tarmac at Terminal 3. He's coming to you now. And Derek, if Passenger Monroe has been moved a single inch from that gate, you're fired." The color violently drained from Derek Hollis's face, leaving him looking like a wax figure left in the sun. Beside him, Victoria Ashford dropped her hands from the keyboard, staring at Cassandra with sudden, dawning horror. Down the long, brightly lit concourse, the heavy mechanical ding of the restricted access VIP elevator echoed like a starting pistol. As Derek's hand trembled on the radio, and Victoria's confident smile finally cracked, something tightened in Cassandra's chest. Not fear, not even satisfaction. Just a deep, old ache that had been with her for 14 years. The memory flooded back. Boston. 14 years ago. Cassandra Monroe, 24 years old, walked through the glass doors of Prestige Investment Bank, carrying her future in a leather portfolio. She'd just graduated from Wharton with her MBA, top 5% of her class. The portfolio contained an 89-page business plan for her first venture capital fund. She'd spent 6 months perfecting it. Every projection, every risk analysis, every market comp. She wore a navy suit she'd bought on sale but tailored to perfection. Her hair was pulled back in a professional bun. Small pearl earrings her mother had given her for graduation. She looked the part. She'd done everything right. The receptionist smiled at her and directed her to the 14th floor. Senior partner meeting. Cassandra's heart pounded as the elevator climbed. This was it. Her shot. The conference room was all glass and mahogany. 3 senior partners sat at the table. All men. All white. All over 60. Ms. Monroe, the lead partner, said, gesturing to a chair. His name was Richard something. She'd researched him extensively. 20 years in private equity. Billions under management. She sat, placed her portfolio on the table, began her pitch. She got about 3 sentences in before Richard held up a hand. "Honey," he said, his smile patronizing and practiced. "I appreciate your ambition. I really do. But venture capital is a very specialized field. It requires years of experience, extensive networks, and quite frankly, a certain profile that our investors expect. Cassandra's throat tightened. I have my projections right here. If you just look at... Richard didn't even glance at the portfolio. What I think would be better for you, he continued, leaning back in his chair, is our diversity entrepreneurship program. It's designed specifically for people from your background. Smaller funding amounts, more mentorship, more appropriate for someone just starting out. Someone from my background, Cassandra repeated slowly. You know, Richard said, gesturing vaguely. Minority entrepreneurs. Women. The program has had great success helping people who might not have traditional access to capital. I think you'd be much more comfortable there. The other two partners nodded along, smiling, kind, certain they were doing her a favor. Cassandra sat there for a moment, the weight of their dismissal crushing the air from her lungs. They hadn't asked about her strategy, hadn't reviewed her financials, hadn't questioned her market analysis. They'd looked at her and decided she didn't belong at the main table, that she needed the special program. The easier path, the one for people like her. She stood, picked up her portfolio. Thank you for your time, she said quietly. She walked out of that building, rode the elevator down in silence, and stepped onto the Boston sidewalk into cold autumn rain. She didn't have an umbrella, didn't have a backup plan. She'd put everything into this meeting. She sat in her car in the parking garage and cried. Not gentle tears, ugly gasping sobs that shook her entire body. All that work, all that preparation. And they hadn't even opened her folder. She slept in that car that night. Couldn't afford a hotel. Couldn't face going back to her tiny apartment and admitting failure. But when the sun came up, something had shifted. She opened her laptop in a coffee shop and rewrote her entire strategy. She wouldn't go to them. She'd build something so undeniable they'd have no choice but to acknowledge her. She would create her own access, her own network, her own empire. She made her first $1 million at 27 investing in a tech startup everyone else had passed on. Her first $100 million at 31, her first $1 billion at 34. And every step of the way she remembered Richard's smile. That patronizing, dismissive certainty that she didn't belong at the table. Now standing at gate C-17, hearing Derek's radio crackle with panic and watching Victoria's face pale to ash, that memory burned bright. This wasn't about a boarding pass. This was about every Richard who'd ever looked at her and decided she needed the special program. Every gatekeeper who'd assumed she was out of her depth. Every closed door she'd had to kick down because no one would open it. But this time was different. This time she didn't just have a seat at the table. She owned the entire company. The heavy steel doors of the restricted access VIP elevator slid open with a sharp hydraulic hiss, and Cassandra Monroe, who'd once slept in her car after being told she didn't fit the profile, stood perfectly still and waited for justice to arrive. The elevator doors opened and James Reynolds stepped out. At 56, the CEO of Skyline Airways was a man whose face regularly graced the covers of Forbes and Businessweek. Silver hair, impeccable $5,000 suit, normally the picture of corporate composure. Tonight, however, his composure was shattered. He was practically running down the polished terminal floor, his expensive silk tie flapping over his shoulder. Flanking him were two breathless corporate security officers in dark suits, and his chief of staff, a woman frantically tapping on an iPad. The sheer kinetic energy of their approach parted the sea of waiting passengers. At gate C-17, the atmosphere had mutated from tense anticipation to suffocating dread. Derek stood frozen, radio slowly slipping from suddenly slick fingers. Victoria looked from the approaching CEO to Cassandra, a dawning, stomach-dropping horror spreading across her face. But before James could reach the gate, Julia Kent did something that would change her entire career. She stepped out from behind the secondary terminal and walked directly to Cassandra. Ms. Monroe. Julia said, her voice shaking but clear. I need to say something before anyone else does. The crowd went silent. Hannah zoomed her camera in. Carlos adjusted his angle. "I've worked this gate for 2 years," Julia continued. "I've watched Victoria do this at least 7 times in the past 2 months alone. Always to passengers of color. Always to people traveling alone. She creates fake flags in the system, demands impossible verification, then forces them to miss their flights. And Mr. Hollis protects her every single time." Julia's hands were trembling, but she pulled a USB drive from her pocket and held it up. "I've been documenting it. System logs, timestamps, passenger names, complaint forms that were filed and then mysteriously disappeared from the database. It's all on here." Derek's face went from pale to purple. "You are fired." "Kent," he snarled, taking a step toward her. "Effective immediately." "Security escort this." "Stop," a voice commanded. James Reynolds had reached the gate. He wasn't looking at Derek. He was looking at Julia with an expression of mingled horror and respect. "Give me that drive," he said quietly, holding out his hand. Julia handed it over. James turned to Derek and Victoria. The fury in his eyes was volcanic. "You," he said, pointing at Derek, "and you pointing at Victoria are suspended immediately. Security, please escort them to the employee office. They are not to touch any computer's files or communicate with any staff until our legal team arrives." Derek's swagger evaporated. "You can't do this," he stammered. "I have 28 years. I have union protection. I have rights." "You have rights to an attorney," James said coldly. "But you do not have the right to run an extortion racket on company property." The words hit like a bomb. "Extortion." Victoria's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" James looked at Cassandra. His expression was one of profound apology and barely suppressed rage. "Ms. Monroe, would you like me to explain, or would you prefer to do it yourself?" Cassandra stepped forward. The crowd pressed closer. Hannah's live stream had hit 4,200 viewers. Carlos's Reddit post was being shared across aviation forums. For the past 4 months, Cassandra said, her voice carrying clearly across the gate area, my firm has had undercover auditors embedded across Skyline's major hubs. We weren't just looking at financials. We were looking at operational culture. She turned to Victoria. "You, Ms. Ashford, were flagged 12 times in 8 weeks, always targeting minority passengers, always fabricating security concerns, always creating hostile environments that resulted in passengers abandoning their flights." Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. No sound came out. "But here's what we discovered," Cassandra continued. "Those complaints did reach the automated system. They were flagged appropriately, but someone with administrative access was manually deleting them before they could reach corporate HR." She turned to Derek. "You, Mr. Hollis, you were intercepting complaints against Victoria and burying them. And we know why." Derek's face was gray. When Victoria forced a passenger to abandon their seat, you would release that inventory back into the system. Then you'd sell those last-minute premium seats to standby passengers and off-duty staff for cash. You funneled the money through third-party digital wallets disguised as priority upgrade fees. You were clearing thousands of dollars a week. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You were using racial profiling as a weapon to commit wire fraud, Cassandra said. Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like a hammer. You hurt people, ruined their travel, made them feel worthless. All so you could steal seats and pocket cash. Victoria started crying. But they weren't the manipulative performance tears from before. These were real, panicked, desperate. "I didn't," she sobbed. "Derek said it was just policy. He said we were protecting the company from fraud." Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said to Victoria, "you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. "This is insane," he said, his voice rising to a shout. "You have no proof. This is all speculation. I'll sue. We have digital forensics," James interrupted. "Bank records, system logs, witness statements from 7 passengers across 4 airports, and security footage of you manipulating the inventory system 23 times in the last 6 weeks." He nodded to the security officers. "Take them." Officer Rodriguez moved to Derek's side. Officer Kim approached Victoria. Both were read their rights as they were escorted away from the gate. Derek shouting about lawyers and unions, Victoria sobbing into her hands. As they were led toward the elevator past the rows of watching passengers, something remarkable happened. The man from Group 3, the one who'd called out earlier, stood up. "She did the exact same thing to my wife last month," he said loudly. "We filed a complaint. Nothing happened. We were told it was our word against the agents." A woman near the window stood. "She stopped my son from boarding 3 weeks ago. Accused him of using a fake ID. He's 19 and black, and we had to miss a funeral because of her." Another voice, then another, passengers standing, sharing stories. 5, 7, 10 accounts. A pattern emerging in real time. James Reynolds looked physically ill. Julia stood next to Cassandra, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," Cassandra said quietly to her. "What you did took courage." Julia shook her head. "What I did was 2 years too late." Hannah ended her live stream. 6,800 viewers had watched the whole thing. The video had been screen recorded and was already being uploaded to YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Carlos's Reddit post had exploded. 43,000 upvotes. Top of the front page. Comments in the thousands. Justice. Finally, accountability. This is why we need cameras everywhere. Never flying Skyline again, unless they fix this top to bottom. The teenager with her phone uploaded a 15-second clip to TikTok with the caption, "CEO fired racist gate agents on the spot at O'Hare. Hashtag Gate C17. Hashtag Justice. Hashtag Skyline. Airways." It would hit 2 million views by midnight. Cassandra turned to James. "We have a flight to catch," she said, "and an airline to rebuild." James Reynolds stood at the podium, chest still heaving from his sprint down the concourse. He turned to address the crowd of passengers who'd witnessed the entire confrontation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "I am James Reynolds, CEO of Skyline Airways. What you witnessed tonight was completely unacceptable and does not represent the values this airline was founded on." He paused, looking directly at Cassandra. "This woman," he continued, "is Cassandra Monroe. As of 1 p.m. this afternoon, her private equity firm, Monroe Capital Group, finalized a $4.2 billion acquisition of Skyline Airways. The announcement was scheduled for Monday morning, but given tonight's events, I believe transparency is more important than timing." A collective, audible gasp rippled through the seating area. Passengers who'd been watching with smartphones raised began frantically typing. The teenager who'd been whispering earlier dropped her phone entirely. "Ms. Monroe is the incoming CEO and majority shareholder," James said. "She was traveling incognito tonight to experience our frontline service firsthand. Instead, she was harassed, detained, and banned by staff who made assumptions based on her appearance. Thomas Brennan, the businessman in seat 1B who'd walked past Cassandra earlier, stood up from where he'd been watching through the jet bridge window. "Ms. Monroe," he called out, "I need to apologize. Publicly." He walked back down the jet bridge and stopped in front of her. "I saw what was happening," he said, his voice thick with shame. "I knew it was wrong. But I kept my head down because I wanted to get to my seat, have my champagne, protect my own comfort. I am deeply sorry. That was cowardice, and you deserved better." Cassandra looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Brennan?" she said quietly. You did what most people do. You trusted the uniform. You assumed the person with authority was right, but that's exactly why this culture needs to change, so that passengers like you feel safe speaking up because you know the company will listen. Thomas nodded slowly, visibly moved. Thank you, he said. And for what it's worth, I will speak up next time. He returned to the aircraft. From the crowd, Hannah Reyes approached with her phone still in hand. Ms. Monroe, she said, I live-streamed the whole thing. Over 6,000 people watched. Do you want me to take it down? Cassandra looked at her. No, she said. Leave it up. Every second of it. The only way to change culture is to make the truth impossible to ignore. Hannah nodded, a small smile crossing her face. You're brave, she said. No, Cassandra replied. I'm tired. There's a difference. Carlos Martinez stepped forward next. Ms. Monroe, I posted on Reddit. It's the top post right now. People are demanding change. Good, Cassandra said. Let them demand it, because as of tonight they're going to get it. She turned to James. I want an emergency board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, Cassandra said. Every executive, every department head. We're going to audit every single hub, every terminal, every complaint filed in the last 3 years that was marked resolved without investigation. James nodded, his chief of staff frantically typing notes on her iPad. And I want independent auditors brought in, Cassandra continued. Not company lawyers, not internal HR, third-party professionals with full access to systems, files, and staff. Done, James said. Cassandra looked around the gate area. Passengers were staring at her, some with phones still raised, some with expressions of awe, some with tears in their eyes. An elderly black woman in Group 4 stood up slowly, leaning on a cane. Baby, she called out. Her voice was strong despite her age. I've been flying for 50 years, and I have been treated like I didn't belong more times than I can count. Thank you for standing your ground. Thank you for not walking away. Cassandra felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, opening. Ma'am, she said, her own voice thick. I stood my ground because I had the power to do it, but nobody should need power to be treated with basic human dignity. That's what we're going to fix. The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. From the secondary terminal, Julia Kent approached USB drive still clutched in her hand. Ms. Monroe, she said hesitantly, I don't know if I still have a job after this. Cassandra looked at her. Do you want a job? Yes, Julia said immediately. Then you have one, Cassandra replied. As of Monday, you're promoted to Senior Operations Integrity Officer. You'll report directly to me. Your job is to build a system where employees can report misconduct without fear of retaliation. Can you do that? Julia's eyes widened. Yes, she breathed. Absolutely yes. Good, Cassandra said. Start by interviewing every person who just stood up and shared their story. Document everything. Julia nodded, already pulling out her phone to take notes. James cleared his throat. Cassandra, he said quietly, the aircraft is ready. We should board before we delay the flight any further. Cassandra looked at the young gate agent who'd been standing frozen at the podium throughout the entire confrontation. His name tag read, Kevin Torres. Mr. Torres, she said. Kevin jumped slightly. Yes, ma'am. Would you please scan my boarding pass? Kevin's hands shook as he picked up the scanner. Cassandra placed her phone on the glass plate. The machine beeped green, bright and cheerful. Monroe Cassandra. MS Seat 1. A first-class welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, Ms. Monroe. Kevin said, his voice barely above a whisper. Seat 1A. Cassandra smiled at him, a genuine warm smile that completely transformed her face. Thank you, Kevin. You did well tonight. You stayed calm. You didn't escalate. That takes strength." Kevin looked like he might cry. "Thank you, ma'am." Cassandra picked up her messenger bag and turned to the watching crowd one last time. "To everyone here tonight," she said, raising her voice so it carried clearly. "If you've experienced discrimination while traveling, I want to hear from you. Skyline will be launching an independent passenger advocacy hotline on Monday. Your stories matter. Your voices matter. And I promise you, we will listen." Spontaneous applause broke out, not the polite golf clap of obligatory appreciation. Real, loud, sustained applause. People stood. Some were crying, some were filming, some were just clapping until their hands hurt. Cassandra walked down the jet bridge with James beside her. Behind them, passengers began boarding in an orderly fashion, but the energy had completely changed. People were talking to each other, sharing contact information. A community had formed in that gate area, bonded by witnessing something rare and powerful: accountability. As Cassandra stepped into the aircraft, the lead flight attendant, Sarah Torres, waited at the threshold. "Ms. Monroe," Sarah said, her voice carefully controlled. "It is an honor to have you aboard tonight." Cassandra paused. "How long have you been a flight attendant, Sarah?" 18 years, ma'am. And in those 18 years, how many times have you watched gate agents treat passengers the way Victoria treated me tonight?" Sarah's professional mask slipped slightly. Her eyes filled with tears. "Too many times," she whispered. "And we're always told not to get involved, to let the gate agents handle it." "That ends now," Cassandra said firmly. "As of Monday, cabin crew will have direct access to the passenger advocacy hotline. If you see something wrong, you report it, and you will be protected. I'm putting that in writing." Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes quickly. "Thank you," she said. "You have no idea what that means." Cassandra walked to seat 1A and settled in. The suite was everything first class promised to be: private, quiet, luxurious. But all she could think about was the economy cabin. The passengers who didn't have power or platforms or billions of dollars, the ones who got turned away and had no recourse. That was going to change. James took the seat behind her in 2A. "Cassandra," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I need you to know I had no idea it had gotten this bad. I failed. The entire executive team failed. I know," Cassandra said, without turning around. "That's why we're here." The aircraft doors closed with a definitive thud. The engines powered up. Flight SA-291 pushed back from gate C-17, leaving the wreckage of 2 careers behind, but carrying forward the beginning of something better. The Boeing 777 lifted smoothly into the night sky, Chicago's lights spreading below like scattered diamonds. In seat 1, Cassandra reclined slightly and pulled out her encrypted tablet. The aircraft's satellite Wi-Fi connected instantly. She had work to do. Behind her, James Reynolds sat in silence for several minutes before finally speaking. "Cassandra," he said quietly, "I know you're busy, but I need to understand something. You said you deployed auditors for 4 months. That means you were investigating us long before the acquisition talks even began." Cassandra didn't look up from her tablet. "We investigate every company we acquire, James. Due diligence isn't just about balance sheets. It's about culture, leadership, the gap between what a company says it values and what it actually rewards." "And what did you find?" James asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer would hurt. Cassandra turned slightly in her seat so she could see him. "I found an airline with incredible bones," she said. "Legacy routes, solid infrastructure, a brand that people still trusted barely. But I also found an executive team so focused on quarterly earnings and stock prices that they stopped paying attention to the people who actually run the airline. She pulled up a file on her tablet and turned it so James could see. Victoria Ashford wasn't an isolated case, James. She was a symptom. We found patterns at 11 different hubs, gate agents, ticket counter staff, even some flight attendants who'd learned that profiling passengers rarely resulted in consequences, so it just kept happening. James leaned forward, his face pale as he scanned the data. Detroit LaGuardia, Dallas Houston, Miami. James read aloud. Atlanta, Phoenix, Seattle. Oh, God. This is everywhere. Not everywhere, Cassandra corrected, but enough places to indicate a cultural problem, not a personnel problem. Your HR system was designed to protect the company from lawsuits, not to protect passengers from discrimination. James dropped his head into his hands. I should have known. I should have seen it. You didn't see it because you weren't looking, Cassandra said. Not with cruelty, but with the blunt honesty of someone who'd spent 4 months documenting every failure. Your executive team reviewed customer satisfaction scores and on-time departure rates. You celebrated when Net Promoter Scores went up 0.5 point, but you never asked why complaint resolution rates were so high. What do you mean? James asked. 93% of passenger complaints at Skyline are marked resolved within 72 hours, Cassandra said. Industry average is 74%. Your board probably thought that was excellent. But when our auditors dug deeper, we found that most of those resolutions were just staff marking tickets closed without investigation. Complaints would come in. Staff like Derek would mark them handled and issue a $50 travel voucher. Case closed. So, passengers were being bought off, James said, slowly. Or intimidated into accepting non-answers, Cassandra confirmed. We found dozens of complaints about Victoria alone. Each one marked resolved. Each one closed with a generic apology and a small voucher. But the behavior never stopped because no one ever investigated whether the complaint was valid. James looked sick. How many passengers did we lose because of this? Cassandra pulled up another file. In the past 3 years, Skyline has seen a 14% decline in minority passenger bookings across domestic routes. Your analysts attributed it to increased competition and pricing pressure. But when we surveyed passengers who switched airlines, 41% cited poor treatment by staff as a primary factor. James did the math in his head. That's millions in lost revenue. It's also millions of people who decided they'd rather pay more to fly with someone else than risk being humiliated by your staff, Cassandra said. That's a choice passengers shouldn't have to make. The cabin was quiet except for the steady hum of the engines. Around them, other first-class passengers were settling in, oblivious to the conversation happening 2 rows ahead. What happens to Victoria and Derek now? James asked finally. Federal charges, Cassandra said. Wire fraud for the extortion scheme. Potentially FAA violations for the fraudulent fraud claims if prosecutors want to make an example. They'll lose their pensions, their industry credentials, and likely spend time in federal prison. And what about me? James asked quietly. Cassandra looked at him for a long moment. You get a choice, she said. You can retire quietly at the end of the quarter with a generous severance package and a non-disclosure agreement. Or you can stay on for 6 months in an advisory role, help us rebuild the culture, and then exit as the CEO who helped fix the problem instead of the CEO who ignored it. James exhaled slowly. I'll stay, he said. I owe it to the company, to the passengers, to the staff who've been trying to do the right thing while leadership looked the other way. Good, Cassandra said. Because this is going to be hard. We're going to fire people. Lots of people. Anyone who used their position to harm passengers is gone. Anyone who covered for them is gone. Anyone who saw it happening and said nothing because it was easier, they'll get one chance to do better. But only one. How do you plan to announce all this? James asked. We don't, Cassandra said. We just start doing it. Effective Monday morning, every Skyline hub will have an independent integrity officer reporting directly to me. Every complaint filed will be investigated by a third party within 48 hours. Every staff member will undergo retraining on bias de-escalation and passenger rights. And we're installing cameras at every gate desk with footage reviewed randomly by external auditors. James absorbed this. The union is going to fight you on the cameras. The union is going to fight us on everything Cassandra said. But we have federal law on our side. Passengers have a right to safe, non-discriminatory service. Staff have a right to work without corrupt management. The union will adapt, or they'll be replaced with one that actually protects workers instead of protecting abusers. You're not afraid of making enemies, James observed. I'm not interested in being liked, Cassandra replied. I'm interested in building an airline where a black woman in jeans can board first class without being accused of fraud, where a Latino family doesn't get pulled aside for extra screening, where a Muslim woman in a hijab isn't treated like a security threat. If that makes me enemies, so be it. James nodded slowly. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry. For what Victoria did. For what Derek enabled. For the culture that made it possible. Cassandra finally met his eyes directly. Don't apologize to me, she said. I have power. I have resources. I could fight back. Apologize to the single mother in Phoenix who missed her flight because an agent decided she didn't look like she could afford a ticket. Apologize to the college student in Miami who was detained for an hour because his name sounded suspicious. Apologize to every passenger who walked away humiliated while your staff smiled and moved on to the next victim. I will, James said. I'll spend the next 6 months doing exactly that. Good, Cassandra said. Then we have a deal. She turned back to her tablet. There were emails to send, legal briefs to review, a press release to finalize. The work of rebuilding had already begun. The flight settled into the quiet rhythm of night travel over the Atlantic. First-class passengers reclined in their suites, some watching movies, others sleeping under soft duvets. Cassandra worked steadily on her tablet, the glow illuminating her face in the darkened cabin. Around 3 a.m. Chicago time, somewhere over Newfoundland, Sarah Torres approached with a bottle of water. Ms. Monroe, she said quietly, can I get you anything else? Cassandra looked up. Sit with me for a moment, she said, gesturing to the empty suite across the aisle. Sarah glanced around nervously, but the cabin was quiet. She perched on the edge of the seat. How long have you worked for Skyline? Sarah, 18 years, Sarah said. I started as a junior flight attendant on domestic routes, worked my way up to international purser. And in those 18 years, you've seen this happen before. Haven't you? Sarah's professional mask crumbled slightly. She looked down at her hands. Yes, she admitted quietly. More times than I can count. Gate agents treating passengers like criminals. Security being called for people whose only crime was not looking wealthy enough. And we're told always that it's not our business. That gate operations handles boarding, and we handle the cabin, and those are separate domains. But they're not separate, Cassandra said. Because once those passengers get on the aircraft, you're the ones who have to serve them. You see their faces, their embarrassment, their anger. Sarah nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. 6 months ago, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, a young black man boarded in Miami. He'd been detained at the gate for 20 minutes, questioned, had his bag searched right there in front of everyone. When he finally got on the plane, he sat in first class and I could see he'd been crying. He was maybe 22, 23. Just a kid. What happened? Cassandra asked. He didn't say a word the entire flight, Sarah said. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, just stared out the window. When we landed, I tried to apologize, to say something, but he just looked at me and said, Why you didn't do anything? And he was right. I didn't. I watched it happen, and I got on the plane and did my job like everything was fine. Cassandra reached across the aisle and touched Sarah's hand. That changes now, she said firmly. Cabin crew will have direct reporting access. If you see passenger mistreatment, you report it and we investigate immediately, and you will be protected for speaking up. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. People are going to push back, she said. There are flight attendants who've been with Skyline for 30 years. They're going to say this is how it's always been, that you're being too sensitive, that passengers are just looking for reasons to complain. Then those flight attendants will be retrained or replaced, Cassandra said. I'm not interested in protecting people's comfort with discrimination. I'm interested in ensuring passengers aren't traumatized by the simple act of flying. Sarah nodded slowly. Thank you, she said. You have no idea how many of us have been waiting for someone in leadership to actually care about this. I care, Cassandra said. Not because I'm a good person, because I'm tired of living in a world where my skin color determines whether I'm treated with basic human respect. And I have the power to change it, at least within this airline. So I'm going to use that power. Sarah stood smoothing her uniform. Anything you need, Ms. Monroe. Anything at all. I'm here. Cassandra smiled. Get some rest, Sarah. It's a long flight. After Sarah left, Cassandra returned to her work. She opened a new email draft addressed to her entire legal team and began typing. Subject: Skyline Airways Implementation Phase 1. The email outlined her 100-day plan. New passenger bill of rights. Independent integrity officers at every hub. Mandatory bias training with third-party certification. Anonymous complaint hotline with dedicated investigators. Quarterly audits of complaint resolution rates. Public transparency reports on discrimination incidents. She was halfway through when James appeared looking disheveled. He'd clearly been trying to sleep and failing. I can't stop thinking about it, he said without preamble. How many passengers? How many people did we hurt because I wasn't paying attention? Cassandra saved her draft and closed her tablet. Do you want an exact number? She asked. James nodded. Based on our audit, Cassandra said approximately 237 passengers filed complaints in the last 3 years that contained credible allegations of discrimination. Of those, 231 were marked resolved without investigation. The other 6 resulted in travel vouchers and non-disclosure agreements. James sank into the seat across from her. 237 people. That we know of, Cassandra corrected. Those are the ones who had the time, energy, and resources to file formal complaints. How many more just walked away? Swore they'd never fly. Skyline again. Told their friends and family to avoid us. James closed his eyes. I built my career on operational efficiency, he said. On-time departures, cost per available seat mile, load factors, profit margins. I thought those numbers told me everything I needed to know about how the airline was performing. They told you how the airline was performing financially, Cassandra said. They didn't tell you anything about how it was performing morally. I'm 56 years old, James said. I've been in aviation for 32 years, and I spent the last decade blind. You weren't blind, Cassandra corrected. You were looking at the wrong things. There's a difference. Blind suggests you couldn't see, but you could. You just chose to look at spreadsheets instead of people. That's worse, James said quietly. Yes, Cassandra agreed. It is, but at least you're seeing it now. That's more than most CEOs ever do. What happens if we can't change the culture, James asked. What if it's too late? Then we shut it down, Cassandra said simply. I didn't spend $4.2 billion to run a racist airline. If we can't fix it, we dissolve it and build something new with the pieces. James looked at her with something like awe. You really mean that? I really do, Cassandra confirmed. This isn't about ego or legacy or protecting a brand. This is about whether the service we provide does more good than harm. And right now, We're doing harm. That has to stop." The cabin lights dimmed further as the aircraft crossed into European airspace. Dawn was still hours away, but already Cassandra's mind was racing ahead to London, to the meetings, to the press conference that would change everything. "Get some sleep, James," she said. "Monday is going to be a very long day." James stood, then paused. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad you bought us. If anyone can fix this, it's you." "I'm not going to fix it," Cassandra replied. "We are. Every employee who's been too scared to speak up, every passenger who's been hurt and stayed silent, every person who saw wrong and didn't know how to make it right. We're going to fix it together. I'm just providing the platform and the protection." James nodded and returned to his seat. Cassandra looked out the window at the darkness below. Somewhere down there, people were living their lives, going to work, raising families, struggling and succeeding and just trying to get by. And some of them at some point would need to fly somewhere. When they did, they would have options. Airlines that saw them as dollar signs, airlines that saw them as problems to manage, and hopefully soon airlines that saw them as human beings deserving of dignity. That's what she was building, not a better airline, a different one entirely. Flight SA-291 landed at London Heathrow at 11:20 a.m. local time on Saturday morning. Cassandra cleared customs quickly, attended her regulatory meetings with European aviation authorities, and spent the rest of the weekend in her hotel suite, orchestrating a legal strike. She was not alone. Her lead counsel, Amanda Liu, connected via video conference from New York. Her forensic accounting team, led by Michael Okafor, worked around the clock analyzing the digital wallet transactions Victoria and Derek had used. And in Chicago, the FBI was already moving. Saturday, 6:15 a.m. Central Time. Derek Hollis stood in his kitchen pouring his first cup of coffee. His suburban home was quiet. His wife was still asleep upstairs. He'd spent Friday night oscillating between rage and smug confidence that his 28 years and union connections would protect him from that arrogant woman at Gate C-17. He planned to file a grievance first thing Monday morning. Hostile work environment, improper termination. He'd get his job back, maybe even a settlement. The sharp knock on his front door shattered those plans. Derek opened the door and found 2 FBI agents and an FAA investigator standing on his porch. Derek Hollis, the lead agent, said, "Yes, we have a warrant for your arrest." The words didn't make sense at first. Derek's brain couldn't process them. "What this is about the gate incident. That passenger threatened me. I was defending myself." The agent held up the warrant. "Derek Hollis, you are under arrest for wire fraud conspiracy to commit fraud and falsification of aviation security records. You have the right to remain silent." Derek's coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. His wife appeared at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe. "Derek, what's happening?" But Derek couldn't answer. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. 15 miles away, Victoria Ashford was pulled from her bed by a similar knock. She tried to claim she'd just been following orders, that Derek told her it was company policy, that she didn't know about the money. But the forensic accountants had found everything. Digital wallet transactions traced back to an account in her name. Deposits matching dates when passengers had been denied boarding. Text messages between her and Derek coordinating which flights to target. By 9 a.m., both were in federal custody. By noon, news outlets had picked up the story. CNN ran it as breaking news. Bloomberg published a detailed analysis of the acquisition and the arrests. Forbes featured Cassandra on their homepage with the headline, "New CEO Cleans House on Day 1." Sunday morning, Cassandra's legal team filed a motion to freeze Victoria and Derek's assets pending trial. They also petitioned the FAA to permanently revoke their aviation credentials. Both motions were granted by Sunday evening. Derek made his one phone call to his union representative, confident the union would send lawyers file grievances, protect him. The union representative listened to his story and then said something that made Derek's blood run cold. "Derek, I'm sorry. The union has reviewed the evidence provided by Monroe Capital's legal team. Wire fraud is a criminal act. The union's charter explicitly states we do not defend members engaged in criminal activity that jeopardizes passenger safety or company integrity. You're on your own." The line went dead. Victoria tried to reach out to former coworkers looking for someone to support her to vouch for her character, but her calls went to voicemail. Her texts were left on read. No one wanted to be associated with the face of Skyline's scandal. By Monday morning, both Victoria Ashford and Derek Hollis were not just unemployed. They were pariahs. Their pensions were frozen, their credentials revoked, their future incomes decimated. They faced federal trials that would likely result in prison time. The justice they'd denied so many passengers had arrived with devastating speed. Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Monroe Capital Group released an official press statement to the financial wires. The announcement was not the typical bland corporate prose about synergies and growth opportunities. It was a declaration of war on complacency. Monroe Capital Group is pleased to announce the successful acquisition of Skyline Airways for $4.2 billion. Effective immediately, Cassandra Monroe will assume the role of Chief Executive Officer. Skyline Airways commits to aggressive cultural reform, including zero-tolerance enforcement of discrimination policies, independent oversight of passenger complaints, and comprehensive retraining of all frontline staff. We recognize that our company has failed passengers through inaction and institutional protection of harmful behavior. That era ends today. The press release included a direct quote from Cassandra. "An airline is only as good as the dignity it affords every passenger, regardless of their appearance, background, or ticket class. Skyline will become an industry leader in equitable service, or we will cease to operate. There is no middle ground." The market reacted immediately. Skyline stock jumped 6% in the first hour of trading. Investors saw competence, decisiveness, a CEO willing to make hard choices. But more importantly, passengers saw accountability. Within 2 hours, #GateC17 was trending nationwide. Hannah's live stream footage, now viewed over 18 million times, became required viewing. News outlets ran segments analyzing what went wrong and what it meant for aviation broadly. Other airlines scrambled. United announced a review of their complaint processes. Delta pledged new bias training. American quietly suspended 3 gate agents pending investigation of similar complaints. The industry was watching, and for the first time in years, they were afraid of being next. Inside Skyline's corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago, Cassandra convened an emergency board meeting. Every executive, every department head. The room was packed and tense. James Reynolds opened the meeting by introducing Cassandra, then immediately stepped aside. Cassandra stood at the head of the table and did not smile. "I'm not here to make friends," she began. "I'm here to rebuild an airline that lost its way. This weekend, 2 of your employees were arrested for federal crimes. They used racial profiling as a weapon to steal from passengers and from this company, and they did it with impunity because your systems protected them." She pulled up a presentation on the screen. Heat maps of complaint data across all Skyline hubs. 11 airports show patterns of discriminatory behavior, she said. Detroit LaGuardia, Dallas, Houston, Miami, Atlanta, Phoenix, Seattle, Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago. These patterns weren't hidden. They were visible in your own data. But no one looked. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of passengers who'd filed complaints. "These are real people," she said. "Real families. Real lives disrupted because your staff decided they didn't belong. Each one of these complaints was marked resolved, but none were investigated. The room was silent. Effective immediately, Cassandra continued. Every hub will have an independent integrity officer. These officers report directly to me. They are not subject to local management pressure. Every complaint filed will be investigated by a third-party firm within 48 hours. Findings will be published quarterly in public transparency reports. A regional VP raised his hand. Ms. Monroe, this will be expensive. The cost of third-party investigators' new staff positions, training programs. I don't care. Cassandra cut him off. If we can't afford to treat passengers with dignity, we can't afford to operate, period. What about the union? Another executive asked. They're going to fight the oversight measures. Then we'll negotiate, Cassandra said. But make no mistake, cameras at gate desks are non-negotiable. Anonymous reporting systems are non-negotiable. Protection for whistleblowers is non-negotiable. The union can adapt to a culture of accountability, or they can be replaced with one that will. She clicked to the final slide. It was a simple sentence in bold letters. We will tolerate nothing but excellence. Anyone who cannot meet that standard will be removed. Does anyone have questions? Cassandra asked. Silence. Good, she said. Then let's get to work. That afternoon, Skyline's internal employee portal crashed from the volume of messages flooding in. Frontline staff, terrified into silence for years, finally felt safe to speak up. Julia Kent, now promoted to Senior Operations Integrity Officer, spent 14 hours straight reading reports. Stories of managers like Derek who buried complaints, gate agents like Victoria who weaponized policy, incidents that had been swept under rugs to protect reputations. By midnight, Julia had flagged 47 employees for immediate investigation. 17 were placed on administrative leave pending review. Tuesday morning, Cassandra held her first press conference as CEO. Reporters packed the room. Cameras from every major network. She read a prepared statement, but her voice held none of the corporate distance typical of such events. I did not buy Skyline Airways to protect its legacy. I bought it to protect passengers. To the 237 people whose complaints were dismissed, I see you. To the thousands more who walked away in silence, I see you. To every person who has been made to feel less than because of how they look or where they come from, I see you. And I promise you we will do better. The first question came from a CNN reporter, Ms. Monroe. What message do you have for other airlines watching this? Cassandra looked directly into the camera. Change your culture or your passengers will change airlines. It's that simple. 3 months later, Skyline Airways was unrecognizable. Gate C-17 at Chicago. O'Hare looked the same. Same polished floors, same departure monitors, same rows of blue seats. But the energy was completely different. A framed photograph hung near the check-in podium, not of Cassandra, but of a diverse group of passengers boarding a plane, all smiles. Beneath it, a simple plaque. This gate belongs to every traveler, no exceptions. Julia Kent stood where Victoria Ashford once wielded power, but Julia's presence was different. Welcoming. Kind. When a young Latino family approached with confusion about their boarding group, Julia walked them through it patiently with genuine warmth. No judgment, no suspicion, just help. The reforms rippled outward. Skyline's 73 domestic and international hubs underwent complete cultural audits. Independent integrity officers were installed at each location. Complaint resolution processes were rebuilt from scratch with third-party oversight. Every piece of staff underwent mandatory retraining, not the perfunctory online modules they could click through, but real facilitated sessions where they had to confront their biases. Dozens of previously buried complaints resurfaced. Several more employees were terminated. Some resigned before investigations concluded. But the vast majority of Skyline's workforce embraced the change. They'd been waiting for leadership to care. Passengers noticed. Customer satisfaction scores jumped 23 points in the first quarter. Minority passenger bookings increased 19%. Revenue climbed as word spread that Skyline had become the airline where everyone was treated like a VIP, not just the ones who looked the part. Victoria Ashford and Derek Hollis were convicted on all charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy, aviation security violations. Victoria received 4 years in federal prison. Derek got 6. Both lost everything. Pensions gone, credentials revoked, reputations destroyed. Their trials became case studies in business ethics courses across the country. Their names became cautionary tales whispered in break rooms. Don't be a Victoria. Don't be a Derek. The passengers who witnessed the Gate C-17 confrontation received personal thank you calls from Cassandra herself. Not from assistants or PR staff, from the CEO. She spent 2 weeks tracking them down, speaking to each one, thanking them for their courage to film, to speak up, to stand witness. Hannah Reyes and Carlos Martinez were invited to speak at Skyline's Leadership Summit. Their footage wasn't just seen by millions. It sparked a movement. Other passengers began filming discrimination at airports, hotels, banks. Social media became a tool of accountability. Companies terrified of becoming the next viral scandal scrambled to fix cultures they'd ignored for decades. Gate C-17 wasn't just a turning point for Skyline. It became a cultural reference point. When someone witnessed injustice, people said, pull a Gate C-17, film it, post it, make them accountable. At Skyline's annual investor meeting, Cassandra stood before shareholders and delivered words that would be quoted for years. Respect is not a luxury upgrade. It's the baseline. Every passenger, every flight, no exceptions. The room erupted in applause. Not polite investor golf claps, standing ovation, because the numbers backed up the promise. Skyline was profitable, growing, and becoming an industry leader in equitable service. I want to talk to you directly for a moment. I've been running this channel for 3 years. I've shared hundreds of stories about injustice, courage, people standing up when the world tells them to sit down. But Cassandra Monroe's story hits different, and I need to tell you why. 4 years ago, I was at an airport. I won't say which one, because the details don't matter as much as what I did, or rather what I didn't do. I watched a gate agent question a young woman's boarding pass for nearly 20 minutes. The woman was South Asian, maybe 25, dressed casually. The agent kept asking for more verification, more ID, more proof. And I sat there, phone in my pocket, and told myself it wasn't my business. Other passengers were watching too. We all looked at each other with uncomfortable expressions. We all knew something was wrong, but nobody moved. Nobody spoke up. Nobody pulled out their phone. The woman eventually left. I don't know if she got on a later flight. I don't know if she got a refund. I don't know if she filed a complaint that got buried. But I know I failed her. I had a voice, a camera, a platform, and I stayed silent. That guilt is why this channel exists, to document these moments, to amplify these voices, to make sure that when injustice happens in public, it stays public until something changes. Here's what Cassandra's story teaches us. Your silence is a choice. Hannah and Carlos didn't know Cassandra was a CEO. They just knew what they were watching was wrong, so they documented it. In 2024, when everyone has a camera, there's no excuse for looking away. Record, post, tag, make noise. Authority is not the same as correctness. Victoria had a uniform and 15 years of seniority. Derek had a title and 28 years in aviation. They both had institutional protection. But they were wrong. When someone with authority abuses their power, question them. You're not causing trouble. You're preventing it. Change requires discomfort. Julia Kent risked her job when she spoke up. She knew Derek could fire her instantly, but she also knew staying silent made her complicit. If you see something wrong and say nothing, you're not neutral. You're choosing the side of the person causing harm. Accountability must have teeth. Apologies aren't enough. Training isn't enough. Victoria and Derek didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their pensions, credentials, freedom, because what they did wasn't a mistake. It was calculated, repeated criminal behavior. Real accountability means real consequences. Power should amplify justice, not ego. Cassandra could have revealed her identity immediately, but she waited. She documented. She let Victoria and Derek expose themselves. Because she wasn't interested in personal vindication. She wanted to dismantle the system. Now, here's what I need from you. If you've experienced something like this, tell your story in the comments. You're not alone. Your experience matters. And the more we document these patterns, the harder it becomes for companies to dismiss them. If you witness something like this, document it. Pull out your phone, hit record, post it, tag the company. Be the person who handles it. If you work in customer service, be a Julia Kent. Speak up when colleagues are wrong, even if it costs you. Because staying silent doesn't protect you. It makes you complicit. Finally, if this story resonated with you, share it. Don't just like and scroll. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it in your group chats. Because the algorithm doesn't care about justice. It cares about engagement. And stories like Cassandra's only reach the people who need them if we push them there. Cassandra Monroe is not a superhero. She's a human being who was humiliated, who could have been forced off that flight, who could have walked away. But she didn't. She stood firm. She documented everything. And she used her power to make sure it never happens to anyone else. You might not be a CEO. You might not own an airline. But you have power. Your voice, your camera, your refusal to look away. Use it, because justice doesn't happen in silence. It happens when ordinary people decide enough is enough. If you believe everyone deserves respect, share this story. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and speak up when silence is no longer an option. I'll see you in the next one. End of script. Total word count 21,000.